I developed an analogy to answer the most difficult and common question in Grasshopper. In this video, I'll be explaining flatten and graft the easiest way that you can think of so that you'll never forget about them and you can use them efficiently in your day-to-day practice. So what we have here in the screen is just a grid, and in that grid system what we started to see is some dashed lines. As you remember from the previous videos, these dashed lines means that you have different information, different amount of information that are streaming through from this component to this component. And to get a better understanding, we keep connect panel inside and we can start to see what is happening here. And in this case, what I started to see is that I have 10 rectangles and I have 10 lists, 10 branches of 10 rectangles. And that's because I do have 10 in extent x and 10 in extent y. If I decrease this, you see the number of elements in each branch will decrease. And if I decrease this, number of branches will increase. But the problem with this is we understand that, and it's kind of having multiple data in this screen. To get a better understanding, I can connect a point list. Point list is a component where you can place some number on the points. And in this case, what I see here is the numbers, the point numbers. And again, they are structured within columns. And if I decrease this, I started to see the rows are decreasing. If I decrease this, number of columns decreasing. So the analogy that I developed is pretty simple. I hope you love apples. So imagine in our case, or in this case, you have 100 apples. This is the 100 apples that we are looking at in our grid system. And in this 100 apples coming from the grid, they are structured in columns. And in each column, they are put into a bag. And in each bag, we have, again, an apple. So if I go and right click to this cells, my apples, what I started to see, all these cells are being approached as if that's in one single branch. You see, starts from 0 and reaches to 99. If we right click and flatten these apples, we started to see that the line is no longer dashed, and we take all these apples or grids and put those into a one single bag, as you can see here. Instead, if I right click to this and say graft, I started to see the dashed lines again. This time I see 0 all over my grid system. In apple analogy, what this means is that we take all these apples and separate them from one another, put them into a separate bag as if they are souvenirs, and then you give them to each individual, or you can give as many as you want to apple lovers. But long story short, when you graft, you take all these apples and put them into a singular bag. That's why you receive this dashed lines again. But the main point of this, by the way, I'll be putting all this Grasshopper script and the images that you saw with the apples my school community. You can sign up with the link in description for free to get these files. The whole thing about this data or data structures is basically creating a data match in between. So another example, let me draw a line here. Let me draw another line here. So if I take this line and import it into Grasshopper, set one curve, another curve, and set one curve. Well, let's say I divide these points. I divide them, the number is 10 by the way for the division. I divide these into maybe 25 and 20. And when we create lines in between, this is the point A, this is the point B, so we can grab them. However, one of these lines are flipped. So I flip in Rhino, so I have the network. And if you let's say, kind of rotate them, we see it's kind of a little bit more interesting result, and we can love these. right? You have a surface in between, right? So this is a normal setup. However, again, the whole idea behind this flatten and graft is to be able to create the data. So for some reason, if your output is grafted, now we started to see some results here. However, if I preview this off, what I am starting to see here is basically all these points, since they are grafted, and maybe I can go a little. So all these points are basically sent to each point on this line, which is not flattened. Because what this basically tells it is basically have all these points and connect them to these points. And they are having 6 different branches, whereas we are having one branch with 6 different elements. And you can take a look at it with a data tree. We can connect this. I mean, you may remember this from yesterday. You see, one branch is being connected to 6 branches. However, if I right click and graph this, I started to get the same results. But then each line will be stored in a different branch. That's why it's impossible for them to be lofted, right? Because in order to loft curves, you need to provide them as in one branch or multiple curves in multiple branches. But you need multiple curves in one or multiple branches. That's why when you right click to this, you may start the loft or lofted surface. So this is basically the goal of flatten and graft, to get the data structure. If you are serious learning Grasshopper, I have 5 spots open to work with me one-on-one. If you are interested, book a call with me to discover how I can help you. You can book the call in the link with the calendar link in description, and I hope to talk to you soon. The other thing that is very commonly asked, and it's a bonus for this one, is basically the simplify. So if I connect a panel here, what I started to see is that this basically, or when I zoom in, 0001, 0002, 0003, and so on. So, however, if I right click to this and say simplify, I started to see that all the unused branches are gone. So we used to have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 2, right? But if when you right click and say simplify to this, you see all the unused branches are basically trimmed, okay? For this case, it's not creating a big difference because we are using this flatten here. But if I take the flatten out, I started to see the same problem is occurring again. So I need to flatten this. And you see, when you say simplify, you have 6 branches without any other indices. And in this one, you still have 6 branches with supporting indices of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and so on and so forth. So that's basically it. Again, if you want to master Grasshopper, you need to learn flatten and graft. It will be helping you a lot to create match and correct data structure with your data matching approaches. I hope you enjoy this, and I look forward to see you in the next video.